Blessings, beloveds. How are you all going? Hoping that you are all doing well. We're just coming out of the full moon in Virgo. So for me personally, it's been a real downtime. Downtime, not as in mentally down, but just physically down actually. So I've had to deal with some health matters and it's kind of knocked me out for about 3 days. Not life-threatening, so nothing to worry about there. But it has been quite an interesting 3 days, quite intense. And just one thing to remember, when you're talking about the full moon, which I typically mention when I'm talking about the moon's cycle anyway, obviously looking at the house location. But because this full moon, has been in Virgo, and I did speak about potential health matters being highlighted perhaps for some people, which it was for me. It just so happened for me that Mars is transiting my first house and was at the midpoint of my ascendant and my moon. So that really just activated the intensity of what that full moon in Virgo relative to health matters brought up for me. So I'm just sharing that little bit of personal detail for the purposes of teaching, right? That's the only reason I don't want to go into any further details, but it has actually knocked me out quite a bit. So that being said, today I've been processing and absorbing more clearly, because the last 3 days my mind has been really in a very Piscean state. I've had to literally surrender into whatever my body was doing, whatever I was feeling, and there was not a lot of ability to control what was going on. So the process of surrender was really shining, in my face and saying, okay, well, you just need to surrender to this. So it was a very valuable miniature kind of journey, if you like, for a 3-4 day period where I had to step into that pure surrender process, which is very Pisces, of course, and the sun is still in Pisces. It's shortly about to go into Aries, which is what I'm here to speak about today, the sun's ingress into Aries. But nevertheless, there are still all these other planets in Pisces, and so today's focus will actually be the sun's ingress into Aries, which is the true astrological new year, 21st of March, when the sun ingresses at 0 degrees of Aries. That's the beginning of the zodiac. So from the point of view of the Western tropical zodiac, this is actually the true new year. It's really a time of abundance. It's the spring in the northern hemisphere, the spring equinox, and it's actually the autumn equinox in the southern hemisphere. So that whole theme seems quite weird in some respects, for us to be going into Aries, which is spring, new births, new beginnings, relative to seasons we're going into autumn. But we've learned to live with that because we live here, right? So anyway, that's another story, and perhaps a debate for some people as well, or an interesting conversation. So the focus today will be the sun's ingress into Aries, and also the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which I want to share quite a few thoughts around, and also relative to the next few days especially, there's a Mercury-Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which I wrote a very brief post about on some platforms. Some of you have seen it. And the theme around that was that Jupiter is at the midpoint, right, of Mercury and Neptune. And so that alignment there it's literally two very different things from the point of view of, well, personality, externalized level relative to nature, the nature of reality, let's say, not nature herself, and also how we might embody and integrate that energy personally, from the point of view of some kind of transcendent type of experience. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I also pulled up a tarot card for us, and the star came up. And so I asked for a card that could speak to the sun's ingress into Aries, and what a beautiful card that showed up for us, So for those of you that are right into tarot, you'd have, a lot more things to kind of think about. But just very simply put, some keywords that I just noted was, be the star, shine in your own light, and be the star of who you are. And we're not talking about arrogance and showing off and things like that. We're talking about just being the light that you actually are, because regardless of how dim things may be at times, or our own energy is kind of dimmed at times, or we feel flat, or we don't feel we don't feel in a complete state of ecstasy and joy all the time, we're still at the essence and core of who we actually are, from the point of view of being this eternal conscious, being a part of this eternal conscious field, being an infinite soul, as it were. That light doesn't ever really go away or fade. It's always there, and we just need to polish it up every now and then. So the star just kind of reminded me of that energy of feeling the right to be who you are, right? Having the right to stand in your own light and shine that light, without needing permission, right, to be yourself. And I heard an interesting ad, ironically, just moments before I started this session, and the ad was some sort of advertisement. It was on the internet that just sort of came through as I was just looking at something. And the ad was about being yourself, right, in relationships. And I thought it was very interesting because of the current Mars Venus. I know I'm sidetracking at the moment, but this is just very interesting from the point of view of having the confidence to be yourself and shine in your own right, which is pretty much Aries, right? It's your own identity. And so this ad was focusing on the way relationships are projected to be what they should be, or what they should look like. And what this ad was promoting was actually having the right to be your unique individual self in a relationship, and not needing to subscribe to a particular model that's been projected for thousands of years as the correct model of how to be in a relationship, which doesn't allow you to be yourself, in other words, right? So I just thought that was quite interesting. And so the star card to me is all about that. It's about being free, being open. It's about purification, joy, health, liberation, creative flow of energy. And Aries is such a beautiful archetype for this birthing of new energy coming through, right? So I thought this card is actually incredible for the sun moving into Aries. So let's talk a little bit about the sun's ingress into Aries. It's quite an interesting time because of all the Pisces energies we have. And when I show you the chart in a moment, you'll actually see that the sun's ingress into Aries really has Neptune right next to it. So it seems that first of all, the solar journey, which is the sun's journey, is the journey that we have been on for the last 12 months, relative to how we express ourselves out there in the world, how we mark who we are, how we show up and stand in our own personal sense of identity, sense of personal power, sense of creation, creative energy, and many more things as well. But we are basically coming to a close, right, with the sun preparing to leave Pisces. And so within that shift, we have this birthing of a new phase beginning. And the phase actually really lasts for 12 months because it's the sun's first entry into 0 degrees Aries. And that solar energy is obviously going to be for the next 12 months. So there's always a great sense of new birth, new beginnings. The the newness of new life, coming through, right? Whether that's through nature, whether that's through our own personal life journey and circumstances. It just depends who we are. It depends, where the sun ingressing into Aries in our birth chart actually begins. There's a lot of different variables with any collective reading. This is a collective reading based on the sun's ingress into Aries. So there are some collective or generic sort of themes about the sun in Aries, but we also can take away from this a personalized experience by thinking about it from our own personal position, and of course where the sun in Aries in our own birth chart begins. So the sun in Aries, it's obviously a fire sign, it's a masculine sign, and it's a cardinal sign. The tropical Western zodiac is based on the seasons, right? The seasons corresponding to the 4 cardinal points, Aries being the first one. So it really is a tremendous shift, it's like we're coming out of this dream state, Pisces, where we have been sort of floating around and needing to surrender to many things that are out of our control, and needing to find extra compassion, forgiveness, empathy, where it's possibly very difficult to offer at times as well, in particular circumstances, and namely in those bigger external events that are quite troubling at the moment. I don't need to voice them, we all know what they are. But there is this sense of things coming to a close and a completion, and a new phase being born. And one of the lines that I really love, and this is out of the beautiful late Alan Oken, it's from his book, relative to the sun in Aries and the soul level, or the soul purpose, when we are looking at Aries through esoteric astrology. Just this one line really encapsulates so much. I really love it. It says, to be a fertile field of fire, clearing the environment in order to initiate a new phase of the plan. And I thought, what a beautiful way to articulate that shift of the end of the solar cycle, finishing in Pisces, and preparing the new fertile ground, as it were, for this new phase to be born, right? Which speaks to the collective, right? It speaks to everything and everyone to some extent. The other thing as well with Aries, of course, is that esoterically speaking, Mercury is the esoteric ruler of Aries, which, for those that are not familiar with esoteric astrology, that sounds really bizarre. How could Aries be ruled by Mercury? But it is in esoteric astrology, and very much corresponds to, we could almost say, the component of Aries, which is that fiery, passionate, heroic figure. Think about the myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece, the journey that he underwent through that process of obtaining the Golden Fleece. He had no idea what was before him when he committed to taking that journey. And thus is the nature of Aries. It is the one sign out of the zodiac that will dare to do what other people will not. Thus the courage and heroic archetypal expression of Aries. So it instills or evokes in us that sense of being heroic in our own journey of life, because life has so many different processes and experiences where we are extremely vulnerable and need to be vulnerable, where we need to be extremely heroic, where we need to be extremely honest. And Aries is very honest and very heroic, sometimes to its own detriment, because it'll take risks that could, plunge it to its death, as it were. It's just that type of archetype. It has no fear. It is fearless, right? But the esoteric component of Aries, which is Mercury, brings through, you could almost say the field of the mind of God, right? Where it can actually, it brings into the Aries consciousness from that esoteric level, the strategic, skillful, transcended, if you like, understanding of the, well, first of all, the world of opposites in duality, right? Because in esoteric astrology, Mercury, the planet Mercury, corresponds to ray number 4, and ray number 4 is harmony through conflict. And it is through the planet Mercury that we either can create extreme harmony and or conflict because of logos, our mind, speech, communication, word. Whilst there are many different layers and processes from the point of view of our unconscious states and what's driven and motivated through that, and then there's the action that we might take towards things. Well, in the center of that is our mind, the field of the mind, and the thought processes that we have, and subsequently what we perceive, right, and what we might act on. So Mercury is such a powerful source and energy to how we decide and act on things as well. And from that esoteric perspective, it is trying to actually bring forth the consolidation of everything from the point of view of balance and harmony, right? Fourth ray. But typically what we see, especially in a 3D reality through the personality, is a lot more conflict. And part of the reason for that is because it is said that the Earth is actually on the fourth ray. And that's why on the Earth plane itself, we see extreme harmony and extreme conflict. We see both equally sort of playing out, right? And one other thing about Mercury as well, being connected to the fourth ray, having a harmonizing influence, because inherently fourth ray is harmony through conflict, which sounds really weird because it's sort of playing with words. One might think, well, how can you have harmony through conflict? You really need to dwell on that, on those words, and really think about it or feel into that more from a out of the left linear mind, right? So one other comment is the energy and function of Mercury seeks to relate pairs of opposites, which is the fourth ray. Fourth ray represents pairs of opposites, right? So that a greater creative harmony may eventuate. That's the goal. It is very definitely a vehicle of refinement, as it ever seeks to birth those divine ideas for the plan of human evolution, which is very similar to the comment I read just a few moments ago, where I said at the soul level, Aries is about being a fertile field of fire, clearing the environment in order to initiate a new phase of the plan. So there's this beautiful sense of the divine coming through with a new part of the phase, a new part of the plan of what's unfolding, at those larger sort of scales. And we are all contributing to that, and we all will be contributing to that based on our own personal perspective and our own, evolutionary journey, and just how we embody this Aries energy. One other thing I was thinking about as well while I was just getting ready for this video is that, that all the archetypes exist within us, because the 12 archetypes are what create our astrological birth chart. For some of us, certain archetypes resonate more than others, and some are more prominently placed or expressed or embodied, and some others might be more challenging to us. And particularly when you have Saturn in Aries, for instance, right, or Saturn in any sign for that matter, whatever sign Saturn is in, that's kind of what we are sort of you could say inferior to. It's a bit of a weak spot. It's the area that we have to work much harder to actually develop and understand and evolve through, right? So if you have Saturn in Aries, just a very simple example, then a lot of the challenges in life would be the challenge to start new things, the challenge to bring through that courage, right, and be fearless and have no fear. The challenge to take risks, that territory is quite scary, for someone who has Saturn in Aries. I'm speaking generally. There are other things, variables that will potentially help that, or maybe make it even more difficult, right? It just depends on the whole birth chart, right? So I was thinking that, a really good exercise to do, and you can do this, with your partner or with a friend, as long as you have a basic understanding of the archetypes and the planets, right? You don't need to have a super in-depth understanding, but even just a basic one would kind of work, just to do something playful, right? Which can be really cathartic. And that is it's called psychodrama in the world of psychology. And we can do that with the signs, the archetypes, and the planets, right? So, for example, if Aries was an energy for you that was something that you struggle with because it's not strong in your chart, you've got Saturn in Aries, for instance, and so here comes the sun's ingress into Aries, bringing through this absolutely exuberant, beautiful fire flame, right, to basically blaze and clear through whatever it needs to clear through, to purify, right? So there's that. And also inspiring that level of courage within us, right? To take the initiative towards certain things and to show courage where we really need to at the moment. And we are all needing to show tremendous courage at the moment, because there's on that external level, from the 3D perspective, there's a narrative playing out that's promoting extreme fear, right, in the consciousness of the collective, and many people are experiencing that, very closely, and many others are far away from it but are aware of it. So there is that fear crap playing out, right, on that level. And so again, what we have a choice in how we choose to participate in the awareness and knowledge of that narrative, and realizing as well that by stepping into the invitation of fear that's been thrown out there by certain sources and forces is only adding to the strength of that narrative. So we must think about that when we are observing. It is different to express compassion and empathy and sensitivity and send love and send healing, and have the intentions of those feelings to be transferred over to a difficult narrative or story or whatever it is that's playing out. That's very different to observing it and being in a state of awareness that only triggers fear from the point of view of making you feel helpless and scared and uncertain of the future, right? That is only a ground. If we're talking about fertile ground, that's just feeding more fear into a face of fear that's already there. But anyway, I was talking a little moment ago about psychodrama. I just want to go back to that point before I forget. A really great way of learning astrology and learning your own chart and diving more deeply into archetypes that are somewhat unfamiliar to you, or sometimes alien to you, as it feels at least, or uncomfortable, right, or extremely challenging. And let me just say this, that don't worry, because we invite situations and people into our life that bring that same challenge to us, and we do that so that we can grow. Well, the soul actually does that. The personality doesn't want a bar of it, right? The personality, as soon as the personality sees, something really daunting or extremely challenging coming from around the corner, it's going to run the other way, right? But the soul is the one that keeps us central in that center point, and it's also the soul that doesn't allow us to see certain things, because if we saw it from the eyes of the personality, we'd be mortified or terrified or feel extremely, vulnerable. And the personality just doesn't like to feel any of those things. It's just the nature of the personality. So going back to psychodrama again, a good exercise is to say you are, if you've got a friend or a partner, or even you can do this with a group of people, you can be the sun in Aries, and the other person might be a Venus in Libra. And so you act out those archetypes, right? You act out those energies. You do that for the reason of stepping into something that might be just more uncomfortable. You do it also because it's a really powerful way to feel into an archetype, a frequency that you naturally don't, that you otherwise wouldn't. And so it gives you a very rich experience, and whatever comes out of that comes out of that. I can't say what's going to come out of it, because it's a different journey and a different thing for different people. But it is a great exercise to kind of give a voice to yourself, to a part of yourself that you can sort of unlock, if you like, that otherwise doesn't have a natural way of expression and flow, and easily, sort of accessed. And so that's a really powerful way to get in touch with a particular archetype, especially while it's being emphasized, astronomically at any given time. You can do this with any planet and any archetype at any time, really. But it is a great time to do it when the sun is in Aries, for instance, to tap into that Aries energy in yourself. If you are an Aries, or you have an Aries moon, or you have an Aries ascendant, it doesn't mean that this exercise would be futile. It wouldn't. You might actually step into different fragments or different facets of that Aries energy, because it depends. Is it your moon sign? Is it your sun sign? Is it your ascendant? Because Aries, through those three major components of our chart, again, is expressed, experienced, felt, pushed out in different ways. The moon is different to the sun. The ascendant is different to the sun. So we need to think about those fine attunement of details, right? But anyway, it's a fun thing to do, if you want to just explore and feel into a frequency that otherwise would not naturally just come through you, as it were. So it is a way of learning astrology. It is also a way of unlocking certain components within you that could promote some kind of healing, a deeper sort of investigating into your own self. We do also have Chiron in Aries, and Chiron spends a long time in Aries. Chiron has a 51-year orbit around the sun, but it spends a large amount of time in certain signs of the zodiac, and Aries is one of them. And that's why, it's still only at, I think it's about, about 10 or 11 or 12 of Aries at the moment. So it's been in Aries for quite some time and still has quite a while to go. And there's another archetype that's greatly emphasized at the moment from the point of view of, tapping into what might feel inside our own self, the Aries component, in terms of our own identity and who we are. And also, more specifically, identity, yes, but also courage. Courage is such a big component to the experience of being human, because without courage, we we will really struggle, to work through things and to face things sort of head on at times when we need to head on. Aries rules the head, right? Sometimes we need to just be very direct and firm and, step into that sort of that field that is alien, foreign to us. And that's where Aries comes in and gives us that opportunity to embody that energy to some extent. I mean, if you don't have Aries prominent in your chart, you're never going to be an Aries, right? But you can still activate and access that energy in a way that can be really helpful for you, perhaps at a time like now where courage is really needed, right? Especially in certain places of the earth, it's really, really needed at the moment. Someone mentioned on my a post, I think it was a video, I can't remember now. She made a really good point. She mentioned that transiting Jupiter in Pisces at the moment, which I'm going to go to shortly, is going to cover the tracks of where Chiron in Aries has been, for instance, because Jupiter goes into Aries 11th of May, and it stays there for a little while, but then it goes back into Pisces again, right? It stations retrograde in July, actually, at 8 degrees of 42 minutes of Aries. So it goes back into Pisces, and then essentially it doesn't get back into Aries pretty much till the end of the year. So we have this opening where Jupiter is going to take us into the field of Aries. Jupiter in Aries does really well, actually. I like Jupiter in Aries, especially from the point of view of, again, building a sense of confidence in oneself. Confidence is Jupiter, right? And of course, Aries is self, right? So, if you've gone through a really difficult time, which is a lot of people on the planet at the moment, right? Let's face it. Jupiter in Aries is going to be, hopefully, quite a powerful and rewarding journey from the point of view of self-confidence, right? And a lot of people need that at the moment because a lot of people have been bashed in so many ways through choices they've made, through the locations that they're in, and things are just happening in those locations, and that's the soul's contract, though, right? Each soul has a contract. I also wrote a post about that as well, from the point of view of Jupiter and Neptune. So regardless of how it appears and seems out there on the external field, yes, there is incredible inequality and injustices going on. There's no two ways about that. There's no argument there. But there is also the deeper understanding of a soul contract, meaning the soul decided to be where it's going to be at this precise moment. So it's not about blame and projection, but about perhaps recognizing, seeing, understanding, and perhaps offering more, compassion and understanding to those that may need it more at this time, right? So let me just actually bring up the chart, just to bring some visuals through. So this is the Equinox chart, the moment when the sun ingresses into Aries. So I guess, the things that really stand out to me in this particular ingress is the Neptune and the Chiron, really. So I just want to highlight that. So there's Neptune, okay, and there's the sun in Aries, and there's Chiron in Aries. So, the sun is, we'd use this term astrologically, it's called besieged, which just basically means, there's a planet that is kind of caught in between two other planets, right? And in this case, it happens to be Neptune and Chiron. So I think that adds a particular tone to this Sun's ingress into Aries, meaning that there's going to be a lot of healing that we are all going to need to step into, Chiron, and also perhaps being a mentor and teacher and helper for others as well that might be going through a more difficult time than yourself. And so you're in a position, you know, to be that mentor for someone. Remember, Chiron was the greatest teacher and mentor. He taught so many of the gods, so many different things. He was one of the most, you know, creative, artistic, strategic, you know, gods in mentorship of astrology, the arts, healing, you name it. He had so much under his belt relative to what he could do for people, how much he could help people, yet he couldn't heal his own wound, right? But that's the way it goes. So I think that the Chiron energy there is extremely important with the Sun's ingress into Aries. As I said, it's going to speak to, you know, a lot of healing that's going to be needed on the earth, and how we might be able to give that and contribute, you know, to people, situations, etc. You know, to as much as we can, you know. And of course, the Neptune there, it's an out of sign conjunction, but it's still there, right? And of course, Neptune is in Pisces, and what's trailing behind it, of course, is the Mercury Jupiter. And it is that midpoint structure of basically Jupiter is at the midpoint of Mercury and Neptune, right? So we have that trailing behind there as well. But I just want to speak a little bit to the Neptune there with the Sun. I feel that that is really speaking to this continual sense of things dissolving. Because even though we've just come out of the Sun being in Pisces, and the Sun enters his new solar beginning, the solar energy, you know, the hero steps up now. The hero has to step into the ground before him, as it were, right? And initiate and take a specific course of action and show courage where, you know, there's a lot of apparent fear. And Aries can be quite reckless as well. You know, it has that side to it. It's so impulsive and spontaneous, but it can actually clear the path a lot as well, because it's the fire. The fire is just going to burn stuff out of the way, clear a lot of the stuff that needs to be burnt and purified, right? But the Neptune component might add a flavor of things still feeling somewhat blurred in some kind of way, you know, not entirely clear still, because Neptune is still there, right, with the Sun. And Neptune was with the Sun, you know, just a week or so ago before this, when the Sun was in Pisces. So there's a continuation, right, of, you know, this Sun's ingress into Aries with where Neptune has reached now. And Neptune sort of influencing and speaking into this Sun in Aries, which again will speak to, you know, needing to give more compassion and empathy, you know, perhaps needing to be of service, you know, again, helping, you know, helping the needy, giving more somewhere where you're in a better position than somebody else and you can give, right? There's a lot of that that's needed at the moment, you know, especially at the moment. There's a lot of that that's needed. So that's kind of a bit of a call for all of us to try and be of service, you know, to try and be kind and compassionate and giving, even if it's to one person or to 1,000 people, whatever it is, whatever you can give, whatever you can do. And also that component of Neptune bringing in the sense of divine order. There is a divine order in what's taking place. As much as it doesn't feel and look like that, there actually is, because there always is. Divine order is always there. It is typically masked, though, with so many layers of what appears on the external. And we can't change what's appearing on the external, but we can certainly choose how we tune into it and how we perceive it and how we relate to it and how we participate in that as well. That's where we have some level of choice. But again, the Neptune I'm feeling into that, really suggesting that there's a lot of things that are just still going to be dissolving, even during this period. And that makes sense to me because Aries is still, square Pluto. Okay. In this particular chart, the moon now in Libra is actually opposite Aries and it's square Pluto. So there's this T square, even though this is only there for the day of this chart, and perhaps it speaks to the collective field, the energy on the ether, on the earth plane, just for this day, 21st of March, right? There's an incredibly intense, volatile sort of energy, which is just coming out of a full moon in Virgo, right? Where the full moon in Virgo was somewhere over here in Virgo. Remember I said that the moon, she was all on her own, on the other side of the chart, and everything was all over on this side. This was not an easy full moon. I certainly didn't feel it was easy. I'd be interested to hear what your 3 days have been like, the last 3 days relative to the full moon. So this is, quite an intense sort of energy stepping into the sun's ingress into Aries. Primary theme being taking the initiative, facing our fears, whether that's externally or internally, and showing courage where it might feel like you're kind of scrounging, scraping through the bottom of the barrel to try and find courage, right, in the face of severe adversity perhaps. But remember, the sun in Aries is exalted. It's a very dignified position for the sun, other than the sun being in Leo, which is its rulership position. The sun in Aries is extremely dignified, exalted position. It's very powerful. It's a little bit like if the sun in Leo is the king, which is usually one reference, the sun in Aries is the right-hand man of the king, you could say, right? Perhaps even a bit more than that. So it has tremendous power. It has exaltation. So it has a lot of dignity, a lot of power to it. I want to step into a little bit about the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, but let me just start with the Mercury, Jupiter, Neptune. That's there for a few days' time, right? I think it was there for, let me see, 18th to 23rd of March, right? So according to this particular date, it's already been there for a couple of days, and we've still got it there for a couple more days. So what I wrote was very simple, and I might even just read this because it very much encapsulates in a succinct sort of description what this energy speaks to. So the blurring of important mental distinctions, and I wrote AKA fake news. And I try to stay away from listening to news, but being so involved with social media, things come across my path, and so I do hear bits and pieces. And I've heard some of the most outrageous, absolutely mind-boggling, ridiculous perceptions, accusations, and statements around certain governments, certain countries, and just, absolute garbage and nonsense. So anyway, that being said, I think, it is important when you've got this triple conjunction, more or less, and Jupiter at the midpoint, speaking to our mind, Mercury, our ideas and thoughts, communications, what we are the information that we're absorbing and then sort of connecting the dots to, and what we believe about that. Jupiter is what we believe in, and Neptune bringing forth that sense of either utter confusion, complete fog, and or complete deception of the information that's being transmitted. That's a high possibility given that external reality, right? We all know what I'm talking about. I hope we do. But at a more personalized level, I guess, at a more graceful level is what I wrote here. The higher and more graceful level is a grand, irrepressible faith, creative flow of imagination, and awareness of higher meaning and connections in the universe. So, Mercury, Jupiter, Neptune, if it is, if we feel into that energy from that point of complete and utter inspiration to create, something, whether that's artistically, through poetry, it could be through art, it would have to, in some way, shape, or form, bring through a level of communication. So that could be writing music, that could be writing poetry, it could be writing a love letter, could be dream journaling. This is a great time to be dream journaling with these sorts of energy there, because there's so much expansion, right? And the veil is very thin, with a Neptune, Jupiter, Mercury. It's kind of, you are merging the left linear brain, Mercury, with the right brain, Jupiter, and bringing in Neptune, the ultimate truth. So, at the highest possible level, this can be landing on, if you like, some very powerful inspirational truths. Now, that can be related to a number of different things. It depends on the individual. But it is an abundant portal of energy that stimulates a boundless sense of evoking the divine mind. So, incredible beauty is inspired. The mystics and the poets are inspired with these types of energies present. And we can say the same for Jupiter, Neptune as well. It's the mystics that are inspired, that are intoxicated with the nectar of the juice of Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. So there's an extraordinary field that taps directly into that divine frequency, for lack of a better word. But, I would still find a way to kind of keep my feet firmly planted on the ground when you're talking about this energy in a situation. I'll just give an example. You might have had some amazing creative idea, and you're in a situation where you need to bring that forth to an institution, an individual, a company, and what you communicate and what you share comes from that real creative, inspired urge, and what the other party communicates back to you could end up being not at all what you thought you agreed to. Because with Mercury, Jupiter, we can miss the mark, right? Because we've just gone to the ends of the earth, if you like. We've just pushed all the boundaries. We've pushed, beyond the envelope, and that's great for creative energy and creation out of that. But it can also be very tricky when it comes to the finer details, the fine print, the finer details of what you are agreeing to and what you are hearing from another party or another side. And therein lies the problem, because you can have this rose-colored glasses Neptune of this massive, grand, big idea, Jupiter, and you think it can never fail. This is just incredible. There's no way this can fail, but it can, and it might, because you've missed certain details. That's just an important thing to consider when you are working with this kind of energy, or even if you have this energy in your chart. So that's the energy of the Mercury, Jupiter, Neptune, that's there for a few days. And from the point of view of fake news, just really, the biggest bullshit has the potential to come through this particular portal. It really does. So let's talk a little bit about Jupiter, Neptune, because this is a very powerful alignment that last occurred 66 years ago. 166, I mean. And as we, progress forward, by the 19th of April, Venus would have, moved out of Aquarius, and she'll be into Pisces, and she's going to catch up with that Jupiter Neptune. But I'll come back to talk just about that triple conjunction. But today I want to talk about just the Jupiter Neptune conjunction, because it is applying as we speak. So the energy of Jupiter and Neptune being conjunct is present as we speak. It's already started. So there's Jupiter and there's Neptune. And so you can see Jupiter is at 18 and Neptune's at 23. So that energy is well and truly in play. I do want to come back and address Mars catching up to Saturn and Venus catching up to Saturn. And Venus has moved past the square to Uranus, so I'll just have to let that one go, because we've just, it's still within orb, so people will still be feeling this. Mars is approaching a square to Uranus, and if I have time, I'll come back for that. But I certainly want to come back for the Mars-Venus forming a conjunction to Saturn. I think that's a really big deal, and that's a hard deal as well. That's not an easy energy at all. The Mars square Uranus is not necessarily easy either. Can be great for I suppose inspiring courageous behavior of rebellion, and sometimes rebellion is really necessary, to break the mold of the consensus conditioning, right? And, bring through some sense of liberation and freedom, Uranus, right? So, I mean, the square implies a great tension and a sense of conflict. So we need an outlet for that energy. Mars Uranus, I see it a lot in people having accidents, car accidents and things like that, because it's kind of like a pressure cooker just building up, right? And if you don't have an outlet for that steam to be released, it's going to come crashing towards something, right? So it really does need an outlet with some sense of intention and focus towards that, right? Because when we internalize and suppress this energy, which can be typically the case with a square especially, it'll come out suddenly, which is Uranus, and it'll be fairly explosive, which is Mars. So we kind of do need to watch that. It is about being able to assert our own energy, Mars, with what makes us feel more authentic, Uranus. But we have to somehow address and find a way to bring a healthy, you can't bring harmony into a square, because a square is a square is a square, right? But you can certainly bring some awareness to the course of action that you take, rather than just being totally Mars and being completely impulsive and just sort of charging out. Although Mars in Aquarius won't really do that. Mars in Aquarius will have that side to it where it's going to see a little bit more of the bigger picture. I'm motivated here to fight for freedom, Mars in Aquarius. I stand for justice and equality, Mars in Aquarius. I fight for the underdog, Mars in Aquarius. I stand for humanity, fighting for the freedom of humanity, Mars in Aquarius. So Mars's actions and desires in Aquarius have that other plane where it has more consciousness and awareness. Mars itself is not a planet that you would say is conscious and aware. It rules our instincts. It's the primary drive and passion and desire and instincts that motivate us and drive us to act before we even think. So put Mars in a sign that has tremendous ability to be conscious and aware and actually give a shit about, the bigger picture, the larger cause, rather than just for oneself. Then, Mars sort of delivers a lot in that sense. It's interesting as well that, Mars square Uranus, there is a reception because Mars is in the sign that Uranus rules. So there's a one-way reception. And with Venus square Uranus, there's a two-way reception because Venus is in Uranus's sign and Uranus is in Venus's sign. So I think these receptions are very, very helpful when it comes to the dynamic conflicting energy of squares. There's some help there. There's a sense of collaboration, working together in some kind of way, right? Mutual receptions mean that there's this flow of energy where one can see the other and one can collaborate with the other and one is assisting the other, right? So I do want to come back though and talk about Mars Venus forming a conjunction to Saturn, because that's an entirely different picture. But let's just go back to Jupiter Neptune and the amazing portal of energy that this speaks to. So I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs now, so I'd ask you to bear with me while I do. And as I read, we can consider, reflect, ponder, and unpack perhaps some of these statements. So Jupiter Neptune principles, and for those of you that may be interested, I'm reading out of this book. And in case you're not watching and listening, it's The Archetypal Universe by Bren Butler. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. So Jupiter Neptune principles: grand idealism and vision, dreams come true, optimism, a rich and creative imagination, experiences of oceanic ecstasy, a spiritualized view of what constitutes success in life, tendencies toward rose-colored over-optimism, marriages of a grand prosperity, excessive religious trappings, and ceremony spiritual materialism. One thing I've seen with Jupiter Neptune, and I actually have this conjunction in my chart, by the way, and I love it. It's one of my favorite conjunctions, and I'm pretty lucky because I've got it in the 11th house, and the 11th house is the house of the guardian daemon in old astrology, which basically means the house of angels. It's where you are protected. And so here I have a planet of protection, Jupiter, a planet of divine spirit, source to all things, Neptune, in the house where I'm guarded and protected. And I can tell you now that even though the books say that's what it actually is. And I say that from my life's journey and experience, because being an Aries that I am, I have taken a lot of risks in my life and done a lot of dangerous things and have no regrets whatsoever. And I can tell you now that a lot of the things I've done, you could have been severely injured, but I put it down to that Jupiter Neptune being the guardian daemons for me in the 11th house, which speaks to pretty much my whole journey throughout life. I've been very, very blessed and lucky, and I don't take it for granted. I'm just very, very aware of it. So, you know, Jupiter Neptune has that protective quality to it, just the Jupiter Neptune, because Jupiter is a planet of protection. It is the god of wisdom. It is what we believe. It is connected to you know, philosophy and religion and higher learning and travel and study and right brain consciousness and Sagittarius, all of those things, optimism, generosity, you know, expansion, you know, all those things. Luck, it can be luck. It's not always luck. People think, oh, Jupiter transit, yeah, I'm going to be lucky. It's not always so clear cut. This is the art of astrology, right? Understanding, well, first of all, if you're talking about Jupiter, and I'm sidetracking, but this is an important point. If you're looking at Jupiter transits in your chart, here's a tip for you. First of all, are you a nocturnal birth or a diurnal birth? You need to, first of all, know that and know which planets benefit you the most if you're born at night or if you're born during the day. Jupiter is a diurnal planet. This is according to old ancient traditional astrology, relative to essential dignities and abilities and things of that nature. And there is, I believe that there's a lot of wisdom in these teachings, these old teachings. They can't be discarded. Yes, there is something called evolution. Yes, there is something called the evolution of the soul and being able to transcend things and work with things at higher levels. But there is also, at the core and at the essence, the meaning of planets in signs and the concept of day birth and night birth. You know, that those teachings are very rich and profound in what they show us. A night birth is different to a day birth. It's so obvious, really, just from looking at, if you're a day birth, obviously the sun's in in the sky, and if you're a night birth, you know, the sun's below the horizon. You're born with the sun below the horizon of your chart, right? So that makes you a night birth. If you're a day birth, it's on the top part of the chart. There's a very different focus when the sun's at the top in terms of this chart here. So this would be a night birth. That's obvious. Have a look at it. It's 2:36 a.m. That's night, right? See where the sun is? It's right down there, basically in the third house, right? So these details are important. And just going back to Jupiter, so are you a day birth, night birth? Jupiter is a diurnal planet. It likes to be in the same side as the sun. It's happier there. Doesn't mean things aren't going to go, you know, very well for you if Jupiter is not in the same side as the sun. Then you'd need to think about, okay, well, if Jupiter is not in the same side as the hemisphere of the sun, where it likes to be, and it's on the other side, well, what sign is it in? Is it in detriment and fall, or fall rather? Does it have some aspects that don't really support it very much? Then when you start getting into that level of things, well then, yeah, your Jupiter is going to struggle. That's the reality. So people just assume, oh, Jupiter, you know, I'm going to be lucky. It's not as simple as that. Does everyone have apparent luck in their life? Important things to consider. So, is your Jupiter next to the sun on the same side hemisphere as the sun? If it's not, and even if it is, what sign is it in? What aspects does it have? Where does it start out in your chart? You know, these are all the things you need to assess when you are thinking about a transit of Jupiter around your chart, which takes 12 years to do so. And then there's all the aspects that it has in between that it's picking up. So anyway, that really was another video, but it's just sort of come up, and perhaps that would be important for somebody to hear. So, character and themes for Jupiter Neptune. I'm going to read character and themes, and then I'm going to read the shadow qualities, because you need to hear them both. They're both, there is potential for both. And it's important to hear both, because if we just hear the idealistic version of the Jupiter Neptune, that's where we can fall into a trap and be misguided. And we need to be realistic. So, feelings of faith and wonder, grand ideals and vision, heightened intuition, perceptions of synchronicities, exalted dreams. An expansive inner life, a rich and zany imagination, outpourings of creative expression, dreams come true, optimism, feelings of ultimate safety, a sense of being buoyed or lifted from within, blissful states of cosmic unity, reconnection with divine consciousness, qualities of forgiveness and tolerance, altruism and generosity, broad-ranging kindness and compassion, transcendence of factionalism, human compassion that transcends creed or affiliation. There are many paths up the mountain, the great liberal religious traditions, authentic spiritual institutions, the humanitarian safety net, a decent provision for the poor is the true test of civilization. All-encompassing shifts of vision and revisioning and reenactment of a culture, consciousness, expanding everywhere. The garden of the world is again enchanted. All is divine harmony, sacred journeys and pilgrimages, mystical or spiritual education. Mysticism is the basis of the humanities. I mean, that I find reading that completely intoxicating. It just uplifts every fiber of my being into what I would call the soul of who I am. And I mean, this, I feel this most of the time to some extent, some days a lot less, some days a lot more, because I have this conjunction in my chart. I'd be curious to hear from those of you who have a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in your chart, and if you relate to these kind of themes in your life. Now, here's the shadow qualities, and these are equally important. A tendency toward over-optimism and seeing the world through rose-colored glasses, spaced out and impractical kinds of idealism, New Age naivety and credulity, blurred distinctions and belief in anything. I have abandoned my search for truth and now looking for a good fantasy. A habit of overextension and being too generous, unwise financial speculations, illusions of easy material return. That's a really interesting one, because that would hit the spot, especially if you had Jupiter in the second or Jupiter was moving through the second. And of course, there'd be other variables to that. Marriages of a glorious prosperity, fool's gold, self-indulgence and laziness along with high expectations, excessive ritual trappings and ceremony in one's religious life, spiritual materialism, wholesale illusions and projections, esoteric pretensions, psychic inflation and grandiosity, the interplay of spirituality and materialism. There are some other sections, but I won't bother reading anymore because I'll be here a lot longer, and you can always buy the book if you wanted to. I always like to bring in books because, well, some of these authors, well, certainly every book that I have that I make reference to, I advocate for. I love to share, and you know, it's nice to support these authors, and slash astrologers as well, you know, because astrology books, you know, it's not a big market, you know, there's only a minority of people that buy books, astrology books on the planet. So people who write astrology books, you know, they don't become millionaires from it. So it is good to help them as well, and especially when they've done great work. So that's why I always like to read bits and pieces, and that way people, you know, are encouraged to go and buy the book if they've liked what they've heard as well. I think that's just a good thing to do. So you kind of have to really reflect on those words that I read, but you can see the magic, right? The potential and the magic in this extraordinary frequency of Jupiter and Neptune, bringing a sense of true abundance. And I'm not talking about the material plane, although it can express itself there as well. But I'm really talking about the relationship, the deep relationship to your own soul and to divine source creation, to all things, because that is the most important relationship throughout our whole evolutionary journey, and everything else is assisting us to be on track with that, whether we are aware of that or not. So, you know, this energy invites us more deeply into that exploration of, what do I believe? What do I truly, truly believe? Do I really, really have faith here? Or am I just, has my mind been indoctrinated through what I was raised to believe? And I've just maintained that as a way of showing that, yeah, I believe something. You know, this is asking you to really delve very deeply into what you actually believe, and not just what you want to believe, what you fantasize might be true, but really feeling into that and embodying that and trusting it. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, you know, I love astrology, you know, I love what, you know, all the transits say and blah, blah, blah. And then a situation arises where the wisdom of these teachings can be a tool to assist you in navigating a path that could be something that's a really big deal. And the wisdom of these teachings can facilitate in your decision making. But you don't take that on, rather, you take on your conditioned way of thinking and doing things, because that's more familiar. That seems like I've always done things this way, and so I'm going to continue to do it this way. That's the conditioned mindset. And so, where did you believe? If you actually understand astrology, it's not even a case of saying I believe it or I don't believe it. It's really a case of understanding that we are all these symbols and archetypes. We are the living embodiment and expression of all of these things that you see in the chart right here. The as above, so below. That as above, so below mirrors a lot of different things. You know, it's the sun's journey basically around the entire zodiac. It's the earth, which is the 12-month cycle, right, of the sun running across the ecliptic, as it were, which is the sun's pathway, which is where the zodiac signs lie. That's one revolution that takes 12 months. It's an as above, so below. We have the Earth rotating on its axis every day, every 24 hours. That's another rotation, another cycle, another as above, so below. That starts to bring in then the 1 day equals 1 year relative to secondary progressions and primary directions and solar arcs. These are all, they are techniques, and they are also symbolic to the as above, so below, that everything is mirrored right down to the Earth spinning on its axis 20. Now, I know you flat earthers ain't gonna like hearing that, but I don't really care, because I view the Earth as a body that does rotate on its axis 24 hours a day, and it is round, it's not a pancake. So there, I said it. So anyway, the point to what I was just talking about there was really referring to all the different cycles that exist that are mirrored from the as above, so below, and that we are not separate from the above, even though we are here. We're always a reflection of that in some kind of way. So, Jupiter Neptune portal takes us into those fields of understanding the deeper meaning to our own life, to what we actually believe. Have we changed our beliefs through time? Many of us have, and we've had to, because a lot of what we have believed is just basically conditioned into our psyche, imprinted, sometimes from the present life, and in many occasions from, or in fact for all of us, we have imprints from previous lives as well. The imprints come to our awareness as we evolve. How? By basically being tested. We are tested with what we believe. How is it valid? How does it stand in the light of truth? Not from the point of view of external data and information and the programs and things that are just spewed out left, right, and center. But when you strip all that back and you come back to center, what do you actually really believe? It's a good question to really ponder on with this portal and dive deeply into what your soul really believes, not what your mind, left linear brain believes. That's just a thought process. It's a linear mind, mostly conditioned and informed by external sources, most of which have just basically bullshitted for a very long time. So it's not about saying, well, I've been lied to, and I believed that because that's what was told. Well, big shit if that was told. It's up to you to investigate it. It's up to you to explore it. It's up to you to see, does that hold true in your heart of heart, in your soul of soul? Does that stand true for you? Does it feel true? Truth is a big deal here with Neptune and Jupiter, because Neptune is the truth and Jupiter is what we believe. So this is a test of what our faith is really about, what we actually really believe, and how we can transcend perhaps those old structures and conditions that have been ingrained, imprinted, conditioned, that have outlived their purpose. Nothing that happens to us is meant for punishment or is an accident. We choose everything that we experience, everything. And if that is indeed the case, then it's not about putting blame on anything or anyone, but rather about waking up. So yeah, I see tremendous potential for our continuous journey of waking up into the truth of who we are, the truth of where we want to stand, and beyond that as well, really, because it's quite a personal journey. You know, I mean, it's going to be different for every single one of us. But those are some of the themes that come up very strongly with Jupiter Neptune. And also Jupiter Neptune can be, you know, being swept up by or seduced by a guru. And that guru ends up being a false prophet. That's another theme that I've seen over and over again in people's charts and experiences with Jupiter Neptune energy, because you know you just the Neptune can play those sorts of tricks if you're not careful with it. And you know, Neptune is one of the more challenging frequencies because it is the frequency that is just so not of the physical material plane of things. Although Neptune is in everything, spirit is in everything. In other words, spirit is speaking through me right now. I'm just the vehicle of that spirit that's coming through. So spirit Neptune is present in all things, always. But the denseness of this physical matter and reality often I don't know if takes us away is the right word, but we forget. It's like we've got spiritual amnesia and we've forgotten who we are. And so a lot of these teachings and opportunities of portals and energies of planetary aspects and patterns that show up, they're always an opportunity to remember who we are. And I couldn't think of a more beautiful energy than Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces to bring us back into that some sense of wholeness and oneness as a collective soul family, which is what we are in truth. I was even thinking today about the situation in Eastern Europe and the main characters in both those countries there, and you know the soul of those individuals has a soul contract to play out that character they are playing out, whichever side you sit on, or whether you sit in the middle, or I'm not here to make any judgment. Who am I to make judgment anyway? But just observing these different stories that are playing out, and how, you know, I was just remembering how we can get so caught up in the drama, and when we get so caught up in the drama, the only thing that we kind of discover is that we are lost. And we are lost from what? We are lost from our center. And that's an important point too, because Jupiter Neptune in Pisces is about being in that sense of centeredness, soul, alignment, which is where your true strength and beauty resides. Because all else is temporary, right? It's all going to finish. It's all going to change. Doesn't matter what it is that's happening right now, that too will come to an end. But, you know, we are just experiencing a magnified, amplified, cataclysmic version of crisis and change, because that's just what needs to happen. from the point of view of collective evolution. So step into the Jupiter Neptune and have a feel of your own set of beliefs and faith and what you actually believe. And let that be a process and a journey, and let it also reveal to you what you need to really see, what truths you are ready to see. Let it inspire you. Just be careful with contracts and written and spoken words with that Mercury there. Yeah, and just to finish up, I'm going to come back and talk about Jupiter in Aries, so don't worry, I'll come back and talk about that, and then I can talk more about that Chiron as well. But yeah, just going back to what I initially said at the start of this video, you know, Sun in Aries, Neptune's there, Chiron's there. You know, there's some pain and disappointment that, you know, that's going to be seen. Okay, there's some suffering that's going to really be very present, and I think the Sun in Aries is more than ever before. Certainly in the last 2 years, while the Sun's ingress into Aries, the call is for us to show up with courage. You know, where we have the biggest fears of shit crumbling down and falling and feeling like, you know, if I don't do this, I'm not going to have that, and so I've got to do this. If I don't do this, how am I going to survive? I'm going to die. Well, I thought that when my dad left this earth. I thought I was going to die. I was working in a mainstream conventional job in a world of psychology. Lost my father, lost my job, everything just, it's like everything was just plugged away from me. Every safety net I had. And as I've said before, I wanted to die at that time, and I thought I was going to, but I didn't. So, you know, just, yeah, have a think about that. Okay, that was a pretty heavy tone to to leave off there, but let's remember the star card. Shine bright, shine your light, stand in courage, truth, spirit of who you are, who you want to be, who you are becoming, and explore what your beliefs are. This is a good opportunity to do that. And why is that even good? Because you might find that some of the things that you believe are not actually true, or they're not actually serving any purpose in your growth. Rather, they're restricting and holding you back. So there's a very good reason to explore the journey of what do I actually believe, and you can do it as an exercise and write a whole list. What do I believe about myself? What do I believe about my family? What do I believe about money? What do I believe about relationships? What do I believe about sex? Anything. You can write anything. Most important, what do I believe about the divine source creation to all things? What is my relationship to the source? That's the most important question. And the answers, if you answer them honestly, it'll be a very powerful and cathartic journey that you will go through by answering those questions. But you've got to be really honest. If you're not going to be honest, there's no point in even doing it, really. Anyway, I'll be back to talk about Venus, Mars, approaching Saturn. Don't really like that energy so much. I know it's not cool to kind of say that, but Still, it's happening, so we need to work with it. Yeah, so happy equinox wherever you are in the southern, northern hemisphere. Happy equinox, happy astrological new year, happy sun in ingress into Aries day. Tune into Jason, the story of Jason and the Golden Fleece. And by the way, in that story, he got help from Venus, which is interesting, isn't it? Because Venus and Mars are actually conjunct each other at the moment. That's an interesting one. So the point to that is that, Mars set out to embark on the journey of obtaining the Golden Fleece that was stolen. And he didn't know what he was going to go throughout that journey. And he was challenged by the king to do an impossible task. And being an Aries that he was, or represented the archetype of Aries, he said, yep, I'll do it. I can do it. I'm going to do it. And, in that journey, he had to kill, these two monstrous, I've just forgotten the names of them, but these, let's just say, two monsters that after he killed them would grow back these massive like teeth, and they'd come back to kill him again, as it were. And anyway, in that story somewhere, this is when he went through so many different things in that journey of getting close to the Golden Fleece. And it is at that point where he gets some help from Venus and some other character, I've just forgotten her name, but there's a potion that's given to him that the potion is thrown on those demonic, monstrous kind of creatures that have these fangs or teeth that grow back after he cuts them off, a bit like the Medusa story. And the potion that's given to him is what stops these monsters from their sharp sort of objects growing back and so forth. And the point is that potion coming from an external sort of source, and it was feminine. Now bear in mind, Jason's masculine, the Aries archetype is a masculine archetype, and it is the feminine that came in that brought in a potion that is reflected through Mercury being associated to alchemical, sorcery, potions, magic, and things like that. But it came through the feminine. So anyway, there's a lot of interesting components to that myth to unpack. But I guess what I was trying to highlight there was that we want to do the Aries heroic thing, and we have to at different times in life. It's necessary. The birth itself, the fact that you are born, that's an Aries experience. And it's dangerous because anything can happen when your mother is giving birth to you. You could die. Anything can happen. So birth is dangerous. So the Aries energy takes us through the dangerous part of life and how we have to be courageous. But the story of Venus coming through with that potion that was given is more the esoteric level of Aries. Mercury being the ruler of Aries in esoteric astrology, and Mercury corresponding to this alchemical magic potion that was created so that he can get to eventually the Golden Fleece. These are really important themes that come up, and again, it shows us that we have to be courageous, but we also have to know when to ask for help, accept help, and also employ some strategic actions towards things when it comes to the Aries activation of what we are doing. just final thoughts. Okay, I'm out of here. I have some things to attend to. Much love. Happy equinox. See you soon. Thanks for listening.